Hi everyone, Paul here from FamilyWheels.ca with another car review for your growing family. And you guys have been gobbling up the Subaru reviews that we've been doing lately, so we've got another one for you thanks to the folks at Subaru Calgary. This week we're in the 2017 Impreza. And this is an important car for Subaru because it's the first vehicle in the company's lineup to be based on its new global design platform, the same platform that all Subarus will be sharing in the coming years. The Impreza has been around since 1992. We now have North American cars being built in their Lafayette, Indiana facility, the same as the Outback. And for the 5th generation Impreza, Subaru says that you're getting more standard features, more kit for the same price. They're calling it Canada's most affordable all-wheel drive car. And as you can see here, we've got some pretty nasty mashed potato roads right now. The snow's really starting to mush up, so we will have a chance to test out this all-wheel drive system. But my big question this week is, can a car this small, the size of the Impreza, really be practical for families? We're going to do all of our standardized tests here this week and see how it comes up. That's this week here on Family Wheels. Well, Subaru's made a really concerted effort lately to up its game on its interiors. And if you were to sit in this car versus, say, the 2016 Impreza, you'd really feel the difference. Here in this top trim that we're in today, the Sport Tech with Technology package, which comes in at $31,000, all the bells and whistles are here, with the exception of ventilated seats and a much larger moonroof. We just have a small sunroof in there. You can get into an Impreza for just under $20,000 for a sedan, or just over $20,000 if you want to go for the hatchback. And you get some pretty good standard kit there. We have things like a 6.5-inch infotainment system with touchscreen that includes Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. We have a rear backup camera coming through the infotainment system as well, which is super clear. A nice high definition rear backup camera. Air conditioning comes standard, and of course Subaru's famous all-wheel drive system as well. It really brings out a lot of confidence in you when you're dealing with tricky winter driving conditions. We've got, as I mentioned, some pretty deep snow out here this week on the side roads, and it's warmed up a bit, so it's that really slushy kind of grabby stuff. And even this vehicle, despite the fact that it doesn't have nearly as much ground clearance as you're going to find in the Outback or the Forester, is managing it pretty well. There've been a couple of times where I have bottomed out a little when the snow's gotten really deep, but still, it's an amazing winter driver. The plus side to it being a little bit lower than those other vehicles is that in this new global design platform, the handling has been improved as well. So we wind up having a better suspension system. It corners really nicely. Another thing that's a big improvement in this latest generation of the Impreza, in my mind, of course, looks are a very subjective thing. I think this is the best looking Impreza that we've seen so far. And in fact, at a lot of different angles, this reminds me a lot of the Lexus CT200H. It's meant to be targeted toward a bit of a younger buyer, a bit more of a cool, funky look to it. And of course, the cheaper price tag, the cheapest Subaru in the company's lineup, is going to help with that as well, bring in those younger buyers. But if you do fit squarely into that young buyer category and you're looking for something zippy to get around town in, the same engine is on board all 10 trims of the Impreza. It's a 2-liter boxer, it's a non-turbo, and it's not exactly an exhilarating drive, especially when you compare this to, say, that 2-liter turbo that we were driving around in the Forester a few months back. That was definitely a little bit more energetic than this is. As well, if we want to look at a vehicle that's meant to compete directly with the Subaru line of vehicles, it's the new Volkswagen Alltrack, a little bit bigger than this, which has a 1.8-liter turbocharged engine on board, and that was certainly a bit more of a fun car to drive around in. I think part of the challenge here is the fact that this tester we've got here this week has the continuously variable transmission on board. And yes, while higher level trims of this vehicle has paddle shifters on board, so you can gear down and play around in the corners a little bit, this CVT just isn't really bringing out the most in this engine. And that's why, again, according to Subaru Calgary, we're seeing about a 50-50 sales distribution at that dealership between the stick, which you can still get in this car, and this CVT. If it were my money, I would certainly look at that stick in this vehicle because I think you could have a bit more fun in it. Of course, one thing that continuously variable transmissions are supposed to do is really help keep the weight of the vehicle down, keep the maintenance down, and also make it a slightly more fuel efficient vehicle as well. Subaru says that you should see between about 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers on the highway to 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers in the city, but I'm just not seeing those numbers here this week, even with the CVT. I was disappointed to see that my average has been about 9.6 liters per 100 kilometers, which puts it more on par with the Forester that we were driving around. Really a lot more of an interesting car to drive, a lot bigger as well. So I'm kind of missing here the point in going for a smaller vehicle like this if my fuel economy is not going to be quite as good as what Subaru is suggesting it could be. Now that said, this is a brand new car that I've taken out this week. It had 10 kilometers on it when I picked it up. So part of what we're seeing there in terms of fuel efficiency could just be the fact that this car is still being broken in at this point. Well, I've already alluded to just how much I like the interior here on this Sport Tech with Technology package, top of the line Impreza that we're testing here this week. Nice attention to detail. This carbon fiber inlay around the door handles, the stitching on the dashboard, the leather seats that come in this trim are for the most part really comfortable, although I was disappointed to see that there's no lumbar adjustment. I was also disappointed in these seats to see that while the driver's seat is motorized and adjustable that way, the passenger seat is not. If we look elsewhere, we've got an 8-inch infotainment system touchscreen on the higher level trims of the Impreza. It's really straightforward to use. Subaru's done a nice job of finding a very simple interface for its infotainment system, and the voice recognition controls make a lot of sense and don't really skip a beat either as well. Push button start with a proximity key is also an option in the Impreza, but unlike the Forester and the Outback on the higher level trims, you don't get an auto lift tailgate with that. It's more of a manual type deal. Some people are going to like that because those auto lift tailgates can be rather slow to raise, particularly in the Subaru line of vehicles. The one thing I really like about Subarus these days, though, is their Eyesight System. It's an option. Again, you can get this on a whole bunch of trims of the Impreza, and it's their adaptive cruise control system, their lane keeping assist systems, their forward collision mitigation braking systems. They all go through this Eyesight software, which is better than so many other systems out there because Subaru uses a stereo image, 2 cameras right up here above the rear view mirror. A lot of other companies just use 1 camera. It means that it's not nearly as a 3D image for the car to compute vehicles up in front of you, when to brake, when to accelerate, all that kind of stuff. It means that it's very smooth here in the Impreza. I like this system, and it puts it right on par with the most high-end lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control systems that are out there, like we'd see in a Mercedes, for example. And then new for 2017, if you're backing out of a parking spot, includes the reverse automatic braking as well in the higher level trims of this car. So if you're backing out, there's a pedestrian that runs into the way or another car that's driving through a parking lot really quickly, you don't see them in time, the car's going to brake for you on your behalf. Well, I find that when I'm doing reviews for compact cars here on the site, a lot of times I kind of have to mentally prepare myself for jumping into the back seat because it can certainly be a squeeze. But I'm pleasantly surprised by what we're dealing with here in the Impreza. It's gotten slightly bigger for this 5th generation, and it means that my headroom is actually excellent at 6'2", and so is my legroom as well. And that's despite the fact that I've adjusted the driver's seat for a tall driver like myself. Here are a couple of other things that I like about the second row. Seat comfort is really excellent. They're very supportive, comfortable seats. And also, this is something that Subaru's done because they were getting some grief from customers about having hard to access car seat anchor points. Well, they've made all of their Subaru vehicles a lot easier to access these anchor points by using this flap system here over the last couple of years. And this means that it's super easy to get into those anchor points and put in a car seat if you've got them coming in and out all the time. One thing I was disappointed to see, of course, perforated leather seats are all the rage these days. We've got them in the second row here as well. They're very challenging to keep clean for families, though. I wish that car companies wouldn't put these in, especially in the second row, if they are trying to appeal to families. Another thing that's not going to be great for families is a fairly limited amount of trunk space here in the Impreza. And while you can get a sedan or a hatchback in this vehicle, Subaru Calgary says the vast majority of cars that they sell are in the hatchback format. And why not? For an extra $1,000, you wind up bumping into a hatchback and getting a much more versatile vehicle. But as you can see here, our standardized trunk test of a backpack, a couple of bags of groceries, a diaper bag, a soccer ball, and a fold-up stroller reveals that you really can't get much more in there after that. This has 589 liters of trunk capacity, which is a long way behind the 970 liters from the Forester or over 1,000 liters that you're getting in the Outback. So you're going to have to really weigh out just how much stuff you've got to cart around in a car like this. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you've got a big family dog like we have, they soak up a lot of room. Once you get that dog back there, they're not going to be able to fit much more beyond that big pooch. So yeah, the size of these vehicles can sometimes be a challenge, and that also is the case with car seats. Front-facing car seats in this vehicle have been a total non-issue this week. However, we flipped around our car seat, which is right in the mid-range in terms of size, to rear-facing, and let's see what that's done for front passenger comfort. I'm actually quite pleased with what we're seeing here. According to our measuring tape, I've got about 10 inches of legroom up front here. And while that's not the kind of legroom that you're going to see in a big minivan or SUV, for a car of this size, that's still pretty darn impressive. My headroom at 6'2" is starting to max out because I have had to slide the seat forward quite a bit, and so is my legroom as well. But shorter adults aren't going to have a problem with this vehicle in rear-facing position, and that's a nice thing to see for a car of this size. So while the 2016 Impreza, the previous generation, was no slouch, it wasn't a bad car, there are some big improvements here for this 5th generation. It looks better from the outside, the interior refinement is better, you get more standard features, it's quieter, you've got a better ride quality as well, and that's saying a lot because the Impreza's always been good for ride quality. The things I was disappointed about in this car, though, include the sportiness of this 2-liter engine. I was hoping for a little bit more pep out of it. It's kind of a bit lackluster. And then when you couple that with the fuel economy numbers that we've seen here this week, which put it kind of on par with that Subaru turbocharged Forester that we were driving around a few months ago, I'm kind of thinking to myself, why not go for the Forester? Get a bigger car with more trunk capacity, with better second row legroom, with more ground clearance for these weeks where you do have lots of snow on the ground, and with better resale value as well. I'm kind of torn about this car because it's nice to have something smaller for in the city, but ultimately I think it's just going to be too small for me and my family because I know how much gear we've got and how often we head off to the mountains. But I'd like to know what your thoughts are here on this latest generation of the Impreza. How do you think Subaru's done with it? And are you leaning more toward a slightly larger version of a Subaru vehicle, or do you think something like this really could work for the family? You can leave a comment below. Please subscribe while you're at it, and then bounce over to familywheels.ca for our full report card on the Impreza as well. Next week on the program, a car I'm pretty excited about because we've had a lot of requests for reviewing this one. It's the new Audi Allroad, another wagon. Beautiful car. Let's see how that one stacks up to all of our tests. That's in about 7 days from now. Have a great week.